Real Talk is proudly sponsored by Y-Wave P20 Pro and MTN.
Good evening to you at home and welcome to Real Talk here on SABC 3. The stage is yours. Well, it gives me great pleasure to welcome tonight's guest, who's been one of the most valued and active social justice crusaders of our time, all whilst embodying stillness and resilience amidst violent storms. Her tenure as the public protector has shifted the tide of our political landscape and will forever remain etched in the history of South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome to Real Talk Advocate Thuli Madonsela. Good evening. How are you, Mama?
Good evening, Azania. I'm very well. Thank you for the privilege of being here.
Every time I've had a chance to announce you, I always say you are my woman crush. So I figured this time, let me not do that, and let's just get straight into it. I often like to start with reflecting on someone's formative years. I was quite surprised when reading this very book, in fact, No Longer Whispering to Power by Thandeka Gubule, that you grew up in Soweto, in Dlamini.
Yes, I did grow up in a little township called Dlamini. We were there actually recently on Mandela Day to try and give back to the community. But I also grew up in Swaziland in a little place called Mbogwane between Mahamba and Hlangano. I don't think anybody has ever heard of that place.
It's the first time I'm hearing about it.
Yes. So I grew up between a township and a village.
Wow, the two. And that's the thing. It's like there's this texture that Sowetans have. And I thought, wait, I don't find it with you. So now that makes sense. But also you grew up in a big family. There were 7 kids.
I did. It was even bigger than that.
Yeah.
There were 7 kids between of children of my mom and dad. But my father had collected the children of his brothers, late brothers, and children of his sisters, who were born out of marriage. So at any given time, when somebody cooked at home, there would be 12 people plus to cook for, and as a result, those of us who were small were actually sleeping in the kitchen.
So how did you find your voice in the midst of so many people in the home?
I guess I was shaped by my parents, firstly, because they themselves were very self-confident people. My father had never gone to school, but he was a very strong person, strong personality, and very disciplined to the extent that when I went to Dlamini on Mandela Day, I suddenly was Nene's daughter instead of Thuli Madonsela again. And that's how he was, very self-assured. My mom also was equally self-assured. She was a former domestic worker, but she really owned her space in the world and serviced humanity as a social worker, but again, with amazing self-confidence.
Right.
Yes.
And even your schooling, as you said, it was split between South Africa and obviously time in Swaziland as well. But then you got an opportunity to write for O Magazine. Different women were invited to write letters to their 16-year-old selves. And I just want to reflect on some of the things that you wrote. You said, I know you are socially awkward, plagued by a nagging feeling of being unloved and ugly. Perhaps this comes from being teased about your big head. And more recently, 2 of your academically inferior classmates have started taunting you too. Having 2 sisters whose beauty is always noticed and praised has not helped either. So, reflecting on this, what would you have wanted your 16-year-old self to know?
Well, I would have wanted my 16-year-old self to know that she is beautiful as she is, and also that beauty comes in different packages. I also would have wanted her to know that she's enough. She is designed for a specific purpose, and she's beautiful and adequate for that purpose.
So it's incredibly empowering, and the confidence that we get when we're older. You know, and you look at the toxic thoughts that you may have had when you were younger, and sometimes there are opportunities we miss out because we hold on to the negative voice that's in our head and what other people say about us.
Certainly, But Azania, I think I'm of two minds about the bullying that happens to you when you're young. On the one hand, it may make you hold back and not really flourish to your true self. But on the other hand, that's what builds you. I mean, there was a lot of bullying when I was public protector, including about my looks and things like that. Had I not acquired the self-confidence and the self-belief in myself that I am beautiful and anyway I'm fit for purpose, some of the attacks as a public protector could have really got into me and diverted my attention from the work I was supposed to do.
So how did you cultivate that confidence? How does the turning point take place?
I want to believe it was a process. I don't think one day I woke up and suddenly thought, I'm okay and I'm fit for purpose. I went into a church where there was a lot of cultivation of self-belief, self-confidence, and a sense of purpose. And I was a Seventh-day Adventist as a child, but I used to go to 3 churches as a child and on any given weekend. On Saturday, I went to church as a Seventh-day Adventist. On Sunday in the morning, I went to the Methodist church because my grandmother was Methodist. And in the late afternoon, I went to a Zionist Christian church, to my aunt's church, because my parents were here in Soweto and there wasn't always enough food at home, and my aunt, as a trade-off for food, needed us to go to a church. So that somehow built me, because all of this was always about, you know, you were made in the image of God, and you are here for a purpose, you're beautiful, and other people are beautiful too, and they too are made in the image of God.
So you internalized that message and made it work for you?
It didn't fully become apparent to me that this is the truth. I still, I think, struggled and struggled. And then in my mid-30s or early 30s, I came across Louise Hay, who's written a book, You Can Heal Your Life. And I started reading Louise Hay. I started reading, from there I started reading other books, the so-called self-help books. And I liked Louise Hay because she says, whatever you don't believe in, just scrap it. So I believe in God, for example, as a singular God, and she believes that God is in all of us, and she's a Christian Scientist, so she would say, scrap whatever you don't like. I think attending workshops and conferences around spiritual intelligence helped me to come into my own in terms of really believing that I'm all that I'm meant to be, and everything that has happened to me previously was there to build me for the purpose that I'm here for.
Absolutely. But also growing up, you suffered a number of tragedies. You lost 3 of your siblings. One was, what, due to pneumonia, another one due to a car accident, and then another one due to suicide from depression. How did the young Thuli deal with such tragedies?
It was very difficult to deal with these sudden deaths. My brother, who comes immediately after me, hanged himself. And the worst part was actually the first person to discover that was my son, who was only 2 years old, and that was terrible. But I didn't go for therapy. Perhaps I should have. Because I think over the years, I may have suffered depression without realizing I was suffering depression. Because, for example, when I was at university, I tell my kids now that I tended sometimes to not want to see anyone. And I would literally lock my room, and my friends would call and say, you are there, we know you're there. But I would not want to see them. And when I look back, I think those were the moments when I was a bit depressed about what had happened. After my brother died, my younger sister died, the one who had just a dose of pneumonia, and over a very short space of time, she was gone even before we could find out what could be complicating it, why was it not healing. And then the other one had a car accident. And then some of these deaths in my family tended to happen between July and September. And there was a point in my life that we thought, who's going to be next? Because I'm now the last one in my family, but that's accidental. Because 3 of my youngest siblings are gone.
Gosh. And you've carried it all with such grace. But if our viewers right now, listen to me referring to radio terminology, but if you're watching at home and you're hearing the sounds of a baby in the background, it's because the advocate's granddaughter is here. So you'll probably be hearing her contributions throughout the show. We'll be back with more with Advocate Thuli Madonsela after the break.
How did it go between Maritzburg United and Bucks yesterday? I believe motherhood is the first test of leadership. I have 2 grown children. They love humanity, they love this country, and I really think they're great human beings.
It becomes a little difficult because when I'm out, all conversations tend to gear about my mother. Like, you know, you meet a random person and instead of speaking about Liverpool playing Man United, they want to speak about, your mother, her report on this. Like, they ask me questions as though I'm doing the job.
Welcome back to Real Talk. Well, if you've just joined us, we're in conversation with the incomparable and ever so stylish Advocate Thuli Madonsela. And that footage that you just saw was taken from her upcoming documentary titled Whispering Truth to Power, and it's directed by Shamila Sidat. So if you'd like to ask any questions, you can call us on the number on our screens right now. So you're the mother of 2 adult children. And before the break, I referenced your granddaughter who's here with your daughter. But what has motherhood taught you about yourself?
Well, I think it has taught me about the need to love without expectation and to love totally unconditionally. Yeah. And that's what happens when you're a parent. But I also have learned that leadership is an ongoing process, because with kids, you think you've got it.
Yeah.
But every twist and turn teaches you the need for patience and the need to accept that they're going to test you, but also they're going to question your own behavior, to say you're asking for A, but you do B.
Yes, and in so many ways, they're also here to have their own journeys. Exactly. They're here to be their own people and not necessarily mini Thuli Madonselas.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I had to learn when it came to their politics, that I wanted my own parents to let me be.
Yeah.
But when they started asserting their own political independence, initially I had thoughts about what kind of politics should take place in my house. In fact, I had preferred my house to be politically neutral, just because I was public protector. But it didn't make sense because they were not public protectors. Mm-hmm. They were citizens with views on how democracy should unfold.
Did that lesson from how your father reacted when he insisted he wanted you to be a nurse? Did that lesson, which you rejected, and he kicked you out of the house, just to complete the story, but how did that then inform how you relate and how you deal with the challenges that come up with raising your own children?
I think sometimes I refer to that, but sometimes I don't until I experience their pushback. I think when they were younger, I had my thoughts on what they could possibly study and what they could end up being in society. But I would encourage in a particular direction, and when they pushed back, I would then remember the lesson that they're here for their own purpose in life, and how that purpose is going to unfold is between them and God. Right. Whatever my wishes may be, all I need to do is to guide them just to be good human beings, to be the best they can be, but I can't determine their path.
You were a single parent, in the 80s, a very tumultuous time in this country, and also when society's views on single women was very different to where we are today. So how did you navigate that period? Especially with the fact that you were studying, you had great ambitions, politically, you were getting more and more involved.
Well, insofar as being a single parent, I would say that when their father was alive, we lived in different places. We're single by law, but in terms of how we parented, we co-parented the children. We were living in different cities, but we were fully engaged. You know, when I wrote that article about parenting being a responsibility for both parents, their father really was there. But after I passed on, yes, it was really difficult because parenting is not just about providing food to the little ones. It's about being there for them emotionally and being there for them spiritually. And also in the 80s, you're talking about, they introduced this idea that doing homework is a core responsibility for kids and parents. I question that, actually. I honestly think they've got to rethink that thing, because I think it might create dependency among kids. And now some parents have even told me that they would write their homeworks for their children to make sure that the child gets the best marks. But where is integrity? You're teaching this kid that winning is everything. So, but I was more laid back. But I must say it would have been easier if their father had been around, and it would have been easier if we lived in two cities. But also being a single parent, they had other implications for it, where if a child did something at school that they were not supposed to do, there would be conversations with the principal that seemed to suggest that part of the reason the child is not well behaved
the absence of
is because there's an absence of a father. And that also, I once remember attending a conference with women from the African continent, where one lady said to me, Mrs. Madonsela. I said, no, I'm not Mrs. Madonsela. I'm Miss Madonsela or Advocate Madonsela. And she said, oh, but you're beautiful. Why won't somebody marry you? So the presumption is always that when a woman is not married, nobody wants to marry you. There's no real understanding that you are a whole human being and you have your own decisions. And if you don't want to marry, you're not going to marry. Or if you're not finding a perfect match or a reasonably perfect match, you're not going to marry. But in those times, there was that assumption that if you're not married, the market is rejecting you.
But are you dating? Have you dated? Because I'll tell you what, my parents, when they got divorced, it wasn't something that was the most important thing to my mother, for instance. And she remained single today. She focused on raising the children in spite of needing or wanting a companion.
Well, I focused on raising my children for quite some time, because in these days of pedophilia and things like that, I was just always concerned about what kind of monsters could I expose my children to, particularly my daughter. But towards the end, I dated discreetly, and I am dating discreetly at the moment. Well, I'm actually engaged.
Okay, somebody pop a bottle of champagne right here. Whew, when did this happen?
But it's discreet.
When did this happen?
Well, whilst everyone was sleeping.
Were you surprised?
Well, nah, it was progressive.
Yes.
Yes.
So it was, you could see that this is where it was going.
Yes.
Wow. Well, it is discreet. We'll respect that. But
yes,
what kind of person is he?
Well, he's a good human being who loves humanity and contributes positively to creating a better world, and respects my independence and my freedom and respects my worldview, and I do the same with his worldview.
Wow. And when is the walking down the aisle happening?
Not anytime soon.
You strike me as a very organized person.
Yes.
So you will probably take the reins on what the day needs to be.
Well, I think we're just walking our lives, you know, and taking things one step at a time.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, congratulations. Congratulations. Wonderful news. That's certainly a high note to go to a break with. So let's take a quick break. Maybe we'll pop some champagne off air, just a quick toast to congratulate the lucky couple. Stay with us for more of the conversation with Advocate Thuli Madonsela. Welcome back to Real Talk on SABC 3. The stage is yours. Right, well, we've been having a chat with former public protector and now professor of law and the chair in social justice at Stellenbosch University, and that's Advocate Thuli Madonsela. Remember that this is an interactive show. You can certainly give us a call and make sure you do so if you have a question or a comment for the advocate. But let's go to Kanyiso. Kanyiso, you're calling from Katu. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Azza. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
I'm well. Hi, Thuli. How are you?
Good evening, Katu. I'm very well, thank you.
So, Katu, what's your... Oh, Kanyiso, what's your question?
Hello? Hello?
Kanyiso?
Hello?
Yes, what's your question?
Yes. Well, I just wanted to ask from you and understand. Especially when you gave the state capture report, there was so much political pressure around it. But I just want to understand, how did you cope? What is it that you put in place to make sure that you stay focused during all these political pressures that you're taking place during that?
All right. Thank you very much, Kanyiso. So how did you stay focused when you're delivering those reports that were steering the history of this country, because we had to wrestle with the constitutional questions, and these, of course, had to do with people in high office?
I stayed focused by concentrating of what I understood to be the truth and justice. We worked so hard on those reports as a team, and a lot of hard debates, very hard debates, took place among us as team members. And when we ultimately chose a path, which obviously would be my final decision as team leader,
Yes.
it would be a decision that wouldn't have been reached easily. And when the headwinds came, we would have anticipated them, that there would be people who don't like this and there would be people who agree with us, but would know that in every decision we would have looked at what happened, what should have happened. Is there a discrepancy between what should have happened and what happened? And if there was that discrepancy justifiable? And if it wasn't justifiable, should we call it improper conduct? And having arrived at that decision, I was convinced that I was on the right path. Of course, some of the headwinds were not anticipated. I always expected that somebody would not like the decision. But
to the extent to which
the vitriol that came after some of the reports was unexpected. And what helped was, firstly, team support, family support, the support from my church and the faith community as a whole. And then eventually there was support from everyone, petrol attendants, domestic workers, grandmothers, and everyone all over the country. Yes, we didn't do our work for the admiration from the average person, but feeling that the average person was in our corner did embolden us.
Yes. So what is the place for emotion in discharging your work? Because by its very nature, social activism or social justice is driven by emotion. One gets involved because they can't stand the injustice. They are saddened by it. They're frustrated by corruption.
That is true. For example, the first time I cried as a public protector was because some soldier lost his house, and we'd been pushing the defense to handle this matter fast, and the bank was pushing us to say they want to go on auction. And this one morning, the investigator had indicated that the bank wants to sell, but I said, let's talk with them. And when they reported that the house had been sold, yes, I did cry. But throughout the journey, I tried not to get personally involved. But you're right that the emotion comes there, and then I had to do a self-talk, because when you get too involved, you could find yourself deciding on the basis of emotion as opposed to deciding on the basis of fact, law, and policy. But having said that, what helped me was that I would pray, I would meditate, and one of the things I asked for when I started this journey as a public protector was wisdom. What I asked my Creator for was wisdom, and during these times I would call for that wisdom
At all times.
and make a decision and say, if somebody is unhappy with it, let it be because they choose to refuse to accept facts. but let it not be because I erred on the side of facts or in the side of law.
Absolutely. Well, this is a great book that was compiled after you left the Office of the Public Protector, No Longer Whispering Truth to Power, by Thandeka Gqubule. And she writes quite candidly about how you maintained your grace and elegance during your incarceration. And I want us to talk about that, because was it in those moments of solitary confinement when there was that silence, when you had your thoughts and your heart to yourself with no one else to talk to? But before you answer that, we actually caught up with her for her to just drop a message for you and reflected on your impact on her. Let's take a look.
So when a woman is completely composed and won't let anything get between herself and her composure and her ability to address herself rationally to a problem, then it is a strike for all women. And it is something that I would like my daughters, as they move into their lives and in leadership roles that they are currently taking up, either in student leadership or in leadership on issues of the economy, I hope that they are able to emulate you. And hi there, and I hope we have coffee or some bubbly in the coming days or months. Thank you.
Right, so that's journalist and author Thandeka Gqubule. And take me back to those moments, because in your incarceration, no doubt you really had to cultivate a sense of inner peace in the midst of all of this tumultuous environment that you were in, and find a way to survive it all.
Absolutely. Just firstly, I want to thank Thandeka for her graciousness. She herself is a woman of fortitude, and there's lots of headwinds that she had to face.
Yes.
When we met at Sun City as detainees without trial, her trials had already started, and hers have not stopped, you know. Yes, we're going to have tea soon. About fortitude, I think a lot of prayer worked, and what also helped...
What were your prayers?
Actually, when I was detained, there was no prayer, because if I remember very well, the detention without trial was 3 months in 1986, and that was the time actually I had moved from being a devout Christian to becoming a Marxist and totally totally atheist. Then by 86, I was now agnostic. So I don't think it was prayer. It was just together and fortitude that came from group, and being anchored on the fact that whatever we're doing was a search for justice, and that whatever was happening to us was nothing compared to what had happened to those who went before us.
Yes, people like Neil Agate.
Exactly, and incidentally, we were held at the same center where Abu Mama Sisulu were held. Their detention was tougher than ours, and they had to go on a hunger strike to get certain things. So by the time we came, some of the things had been relaxed. So I think a lot of it had to do with looking at people like Priscilla Jana that had suffered, Victoria Mxenge, whose funeral I'd attended, and looking at the difference. But a lot of talking to yourself, even if you're not spiritual, does build you, because there you are. We have only 1 hour of meeting together with the rest of the group, and we had Mam Vesta, who was the oldest among us, who counseled us, who encouraged us. And but a lot of what I am today, that internal strength, comes from the spiritual journey that came later, because I've always been a spiritual seeker. At some stage, I was even a Scientologist. It then also comes from attending a lot of workshops on something called emotional intelligence, and where you taught about why do we react negatively. I mean, part of the reason we react negatively, if you look at what Viktor Frankl says in Search of Meaning, is we judge, we react negatively, we try to control, whereas if you decide that nobody owns you, nobody owns your emotions, and when a trigger happens,
what do you do? How do you react? Yeah.
You manage the gap.
Absolutely.
You manage the gap. Instead of reacting, you respond, because whoever says things about you, you note those things. That's their view. Sometimes it's not even their view. They're just trying to annoy you.
Absolutely.
So you have to be solidly aware of who you are and what you are all about.
I can see a tour happening. Talks all over the country happening because you've learned so much and there's clearly so much more to share with an audience that can benefit. Sure.
Thank you.
I don't think we'll have enough time. I actually don't think we'll have time. We could talk to this extraordinary woman all evening, but after the break, we are going to shake things up a little bit with advocate Thuli Madonsela. Make sure you don't go away. Welcome back to Real Talk. If you've just joined us, we're having a conversation with 5-time honorary PhD holder, advocate Thuli Madonsela. And some of you may not know this, but she was one of the key people who played a key role in drafting the Constitution of South Africa. Great opportunity. In fact, she turned down an opportunity to study at Harvard to be able to be a part of this team. So apart from that, you know, that's a much talked about story. There are other things that people might not realize about you. You used to make your own clothing. You have a flair and a love for fashion.
I really do. I made most of my clothes when I was young.
Yes.
When I was a young woman. As a child, of course, my parents bought the clothes. University, all of the special clothes, I made them. I still design a few things. Some of them end up nowhere.
So what do you
Some
think
I
of the
get a
design
seamstress.
talent, the people that are rushing to try and dress you? What do you think?
Well, they've done a splendid job. I must say, when I eventually teamed up with Johan Kutsi, I really stopped designing for myself because he would just walk away and come up with something spectacular.
Yes.
I didn't have to say, turn this around, etc.
Well,
everything he came back with was amazing.
Well, before the break, we talked about potentially doing a tour and a series of books. But now it sounds like there's also a range, a fashion range that could be on the offing. Now, a little birdie also tells me that you love to sing. Is it a 1950s song? Sarah, Sarah? Or you quote that, whatever will be, will be.
Oh, yes, when they were growing up, K Sarah, Sarah, whatever will be, will be.
Yes.
The future's not ours to see. K Sarah, Sarah. Well, but I sing in my bathroom and in my bedroom. I don't sing in public, really, yes.
Only with those that are closest to you. And you've also joined a Gogo's group in Stellenbosch. What's the Gogo's group all about?
Well, I haven't joined it yet, but I've been invited to join a Gogo's group. It's amazing how being a parent has a different dimension when you become a Gogo. I suppose because when you're a Gogo, you don't have to worry about the little one being the most precious thing that God has put in your hands. So we're more relaxed as Gogos, and there's just more outpouring of love. You love your kids, obviously, 100%, but there's more show of affection when it comes to being Gogos. So I've been invited. And the Gogos have even advised me to create my own nursery in my own house, but I don't have enough space to do that.
Yes, and life in Stellenbosch, of course, and maybe when the little one comes along to visit, there'll be space for her. But
yes.
Why have you banned 30 seconds in your home, the game 30 seconds?
Well, I haven't banned it. Now, they banned it. I didn't ban it. But fortunately, there are people who are on my side on this one. It was about what is the purpose of this game. If on this game we have a card that has Bob Geldof, my understanding is that the right answer should be somebody who knows who's Bob Geldof. So my kids suggest that, no, you've got to play it and find something that means a Bob, and find something that means a G, and then off. No. And then in the end, if you connect those three, even if you never ever get to know who was Bob Geldof, that's okay, you've won the game. It was meant to inspire some knowledge. They say, I'm ruining it.
Absolutely. So let's see. I want us to play the game. Taban, come. I've asked our floor manager to give you some cards, not for me. Let's see if Advocate Madonsela's general sense of knowledge, whether you'll be able to give me the clues. And we're going to do a hard count. Right, let's try this so that you can warm up to this game and love it all over again. What clues? Let me see if my general knowledge is on point. What are the clues? You've got the answers, right? Yes.
Yes. The clues?
Yes.
Somebody who has a huge following on Twitter, the first one.
An influencer?
An influencer of influencers.
An influencer of influencers. What do we have these days? We have those guys, the Slay Queen?
Yes, thank you. Oh my God, the second one, I think we'll have to do it the way my kids want to do it because I have no idea what is it.
I think our time would be up.
Okay.
I wouldn't want you on my team.
Can I go to
Advocate.
3? Okay.
I wouldn't want you on my team because it has to be rapid fire.
Okay, yeah, they would say, I don't know, I don't even know what I would do for 2. Can I go to 3? Can I
Yes,
okay,
let's try
3.
another
A group that sang a song with Paul Simon. And
Lady Smith Black Mambazo.
wonderful. She is a queen of talk shows.
Oprah Winfrey.
Queen of queens, yes.
Oprah Winfrey.
And she started the trend around, oh God, now I don't know. Well, she was recently in the newspaper for being beaten up by their boyfriend.
Babes Odumo.
Wonderful.
Yay!
I don't know number 2.
So 3 out of 4.
We got 4 out of 5.
5.
Yes.
Exceptional. Exceptional. We could make a great team. We could make a great team.
But not the way my kids want to do it.
Well, Advocate, you've contributed so much to this country. We've tested ourselves. Here we go. We wanted to present you with these, a very humble gesture from the team representing the adoration that so many feel about you in this country because you continue to contribute in an immense way. So this is just a small token, a tiny little token. Thank you very much. And also, of course, congratulations on the engagement.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Advocate.
Lovely.
Thank you very
Beautiful.
much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Whew. So after the break, we actually have our Huawei hashtag Real Talk moments for this week, and make sure that you stay tuned for that. It's been wonderful. Thank you. Welcome back to Real Talk. We've been capturing moments and connecting with people every week on the show with Huawei and Yanis Vermeeren as part of our hashtag Real Talk Moments campaign. So let's see who Yanis connected with this week.
Real Talk is proudly sponsored by Huawei P20 Pro and MTN.
How's it going, Real Talk? So today's a special one. We know that life is all about connecting with people, and not always friends and family and those close to us, but sometimes connecting with complete strangers, people that may need just a little bit of help. The young boy we're meeting today, he's suffering from a life-threatening illness called Fanconi anemia, and him and his family have gone through a lot. I know we've got a fun-filled day lined up for him, and this, I can guarantee you, is all about sharing special moments.
Hello, guys.
Hello.
Gideon. Wow, nice to meet you.
Gideon has got an incredible fighting spirit. He will never lie down, and I think I always say because he was born premature, it's because of his impatience, just like Mom. So he doesn't have time to sit around being ill. He just wants to get it over with, get in the stride, whatever needs to be done, or whatever infusions he needs to get, it must just be done so he can go on with his life.
Tushka, this has been a tough road for you guys.
Yes, it's been a battle for about 9 years now.
Wow. So he was born with this illness.
Yes, and he was diagnosed at birth as well. So when he was born, he was in neonatal ICU, and he was there for 2 months. Was put on a ventilator for about 8 months, and when he was 2 days old, they told me that his esophagus didn't attach to his stomach. So he had to get a major operation when he was 2 days old, where he cuts him literally open from top to the back. Prior to that, they told me there might be a chromosomal defect. And I asked the doctor, it's like, okay, why? I know he's small, but I can't really see something different. And he said to me, there's something wrong with his thumbs. And even if you look at his thumbs now, you will see that he doesn't have any joints. And he said to me, that usually is a sign of a chromosomal defect. And when they tested it, they found that he had Fanconi anemia, which is a very rare disorder.
And have you had a lot of support from friends and family?
Yes, luckily, thank the Lord for that. We've got a lot of support of friends and family. They told us that the life expectancy was very low, that he would probably live only to the age of 7 years old. So for a while, there was like the sword hanging over me of, when is my child going to die? And is this day the last day? And at one stage, we just made peace with the fact of it all, is that all of our lives are borrowed, you know.
While I'm busy chatting to Mom and obviously finding out more about the illness, he came up to us, Gideon, and he's like, no, Mom, can I take him up to my secret cupboard? So up we went to his room. So you want to be a fireman when you're older? Yes. Wow, look at that cupboard. You guys look tired already. No. Should we just go sleep and relax, or should we go? No, you want to go have some fun? Yes. Jumping in the car, the boys were so excited. They had no idea what the surprise was for the day. It's nice to see boys just so amped and full of energy.
Let's go!
The side effects of FA is that you have no energy, yet Gideon is the complete opposite. He's a bundle of energy and joy. Okay, so we've just arrived here at Josie X, which is the ultimate playground for kids. There's CrossFit stuff, there's jungle gyms, there's adventure parks, there's Nerf gun wars, there's paintball, you name it, it's all here, one destination. The boys had never seen anything like this. They're Nerf gun addicts, and here they've got a proper Nerf gun park, so they're in heaven right here, right now. I had a go with the kids. I said, listen here guys, I'm the target, I'll play one game with you. Obviously they came after me, guns blazing.
Oh, got you!
He's a complete fighting spirit, and he's such an, I always call him my angel child, and I think it's fitting because of the Fanconi anemia, he's got different DNA compared to us. So yeah, angels should have different DNA.
These hashtag Real Talk moments where we connect with people really, I mean, I can't emphasize it enough, but they give you a proper reality check, because the stories are devastating, and what these people have been through emotionally is something that would break most people, yet they're such fighters, and they keep on pushing through. You guys have got a big decision ahead of you, because if Gideon doesn't get a bone marrow transplant, the chances aren't good.
No, that's true. We actually don't have a decision. He has to get a bone marrow transplant. The prognosis is 0.
So how can we help? What do we need to do? How do we raise money for you? What is the solution here? Because you guys need money.
We need money, and we've got an NPO that's called Fanconi Anemia Hope Foundation, which also gives the 18A certificates. Gideon's got his own Facebook page as well, and we would really, really appreciate it if you could find it in your hearts to help us. We can't do this alone.
I agree fully with Tushka. This is a fight that they can't fight on their own. We have to come together, and they need money. We need to raise money to try and save this young man's life. On behalf of our sponsors, YWay and MTN, I've got a bag full of goodies in there. Your mom can steal most of them, but there's speakers in there. There's all kinds of fantastic little devices, but this one's for you.
Thank you so much.
Hey?
My hope for my boy is to get married one day when he's like 45 or 50, but also to become a fireman, and to be, if I see how he inspires people and I see the hope and the light that he brings to people, I think that is his calling in life, and I would like him to fulfill that.
Okay, let's wave to Azania. Say hello, Azania. Azza, I just want to say a big thank you to you, to Real Talk, for making this happen. Obviously, to our sponsors, our friends, YWay and MTN. Without you guys, none of these hashtag Real Talk moments would be possible. To all South Africans whose hearts we have hopefully touched, all we need is to raise some money so that Gideon can have his bone marrow transplant, and that he can live to be a fireman or a policeman.
Yes.
Mwah, much love. Back to you guys in studio.
Real Talk is proudly sponsored by Y-Way P20 Pro and MTN.
Well, thank you, Yanez. If you'd like more information on Gideon's story and you want to reach out, please visit his Facebook page listed on the screen right now. Well, it's been such an honor and a great privilege to have Advocate Thuli Madonsela here in the studio. And one of the most important people in her life is this little one. Oh, how adorable is she? So we substituted the advocate with this one, her granddaughter. Thank you so much for watching. Good night from the team from Real Talk. We'll see you again tomorrow. Hey, Melo, say bye.